In the fascinating world of prehistoric beasts, size wasn't always the scariest factor. Some animals used brutal techniques and biological adaptations to take down prey in frightful fashion. Let's take a look at some of the most gruesome methods used by prehistoric animals, from land, sea, and air. Whether it's a slow, gory death like our first guest, being swallowed whole, or a brutal venom like our fourth guest, you won't want to miss these horrid tactics. First up, we will introduce a fairly popular animal already, the Megaraptor. Now, this one did have size in its favor, being around 8 meters long, but it didn't always use a bone-crushing bite like a T-Rex to take down prey. It had other tools too. First, there are the claws. These predators didn't earn their name Megaraptor for nothing. Their forelimbs were armed with elongated blade-like claws that could grow up to 35 centimeters long. With each strike, the claws would rip through flesh, tearing muscles and arteries. The curvature and sharpness of the claws ensured they could latch onto prey, creating deep, gaping wounds that made escape nearly impossible. What makes this worse is the build of their arms. Unlike many theropods, Megaraptors had unusually powerful forelimbs. But because dinosaur wrists and elbows were far less flexible than in mammals, not only were they incredibly strong, but it would be near impossible to exert sufficient force on the arms of Megaraptor to bend it and free yourself. At the same time, however, the claws were the opposite, hyperextending to all sorts of crazy angles, meaning any fighting against them would result in the claws simply moving with the prey, maintaining a solid grip. And creepier still, Megaraptor could move their shoulders like we do, advanced for its time and unlike any other predator. This meant it ate somewhat like us, moving their prey up to their mouth with their hands. This mode of feeding only applies to prey small enough to be moved up to the mouth, which includes human-sized animals. For bigger prey, they used their speed and agility. They could outrun, overpower, and outlast most prey in its environment, its long, counterbalancing tail helping it to turn sharply and stay agile during the chase. They would use their speed to attack with slashing claw strikes, resulting in massive blood loss, the screams of their prey echoing through the landscape. Then Megaraptor would begin feeding on the soft tissue of their incapacitated prey. What made this worse was the creature's feeding behavior. It didn't wait for its prey to die. As the victim thrashed, the Megaraptor would begin tearing off chunks of flesh, consuming them even as the animal struggled in vain. Each bite added to the torment, ensuring a slow, agonizing death. Nothing quick and clean about it. This slow death is going to become a bit of a trend throughout this video, so make sure to stick around to find out how somehow it can get even worse. Our next guest wasn't just a predator, it was a living trap. A behemoth of the Carboniferous and early Permian swamps, with a death strategy so simple, yet so horrifying, that it made survival nearly impossible for its prey. Eryops megacephalus wasn't fast, but it didn't need to be. Measuring up to 10 feet long, this primitive amphibian used its massive, flat body and camouflaged coloring to blend seamlessly with its environment. It would lie in wait, motionless, submerged beneath the water's surface, or hidden among reeds. Its eyes, positioned high on its broad, flat skull, allowed it to scan for prey without revealing its presence. For prey, this meant you wouldn't see Eryops coming until it was too late. A sudden lunge, and you'd find yourself ensnared by its enormous mouth, your body crushed between rows of sharp, conical teeth designed to trap prey. Once caught in its jaws, the sheer crushing force would immobilize prey, breaking bones and preventing any chance of escape. Its teeth weren't designed to slice but to hold, the perfect adaptation for a predator that relied on brute strength. But the true horror was in what came next. Eryops had a massive, gaping mouth that accounted for much of its skull. Unlike predators that tore their prey into smaller pieces, Eryops used a technique known as inertial feeding. It would grasp its prey, then thrust forward, using this motion to then catch the prey again deeper in the mouth. As the victim, you'd be alive and conscious as the Eryops began its grim process. First, you'd feel the crushing pressure of its jaws as it clamped down on your body, ensuring no chance of wriggling free. Then, you'd feel yourself being tilted backward as it began the swallowing process. Its massive throat muscles, combined with gravity, would drag you deeper into the darkness of its gullet. And all of this could theoretically occur while you were still alive. With no large teeth to inflict a skull-crushing bite, paralysis was likely common. Either total paralysis, or at least of the limbs as arms and legs are squashed in its flat, crushing mouth. Then, before you know it, you're sliding down its throat, feeling every movement through each of the broken bones as you enter its stomach. Brutal. For our next gruesome guest, we move to the ancient forests of New Zealand, where terror came not from the ground, but from the skies. The Haast's eagle was the largest eagle to ever live, and its hunting style was as brutal as it was effective. With a wingspan of up to 3 meters or 10 feet and weighing around 15 kilograms or 33 pounds, it was the apex predator of New Zealand's prehistoric ecosystems. But its size didn't make it slow. In fact, this eagle was shockingly agile, capable of high-speed dives that turned it into a living missile. The Haast's eagle hunted giant flightless birds of the region called moa, using its massive curved talons that were larger than a grizzly bear's claws. These talons, some measuring up to 9 centimeters or 3.5 inches long, were perfectly adapted to puncture flesh and crush bones. And when the eagle struck, it didn't aim randomly. Its target was precise, the moa's back. The eagle's talons were designed to pierce deep into the spinal column, severing nerves and rendering its prey paralyzed. As the moa collapsed to the ground, unable to move but fully conscious, the Haast's eagle began its gruesome work. Unlike predators that kill quickly, the Haast's eagle preferred to disable its prey first, leaving it alive but utterly helpless. After delivering the paralyzing blow, it would turn its attention to the most accessible and nutritious parts of the body, the internal organs. With its sharp, hooked beak, the eagle would rip open the abdomen, plunging its head into the cavity to access the rich organs within. And of course, this wasn't a quick process. For the moa, the experience was nothing short of horrific. Unable to move or escape, it would feel the eagle tearing into its body, piece by piece. Death would come slowly, either from blood loss, shock, or the sheer trauma of being eaten alive. Not only this, but the Haast's eagle had no true competitors on the scarcely inhabited islands. This meant that it could comfortably leave its large kill and return over the course of a few sitting, perhaps even days. As a result, keeping the animal alive was actually within its interest, as it meant its food source remained fresher for longer. This worked well until humans arrived and also targeted the moa, hunting them to extinction. Food became harder and harder to find for the Haast's eagle, and this sometimes resulted in humans becoming the target of these aerial predators. Check out one of our other videos linked on the screen now for more information on the confrontation humans faced with these beasts only a few hundred years ago. And if you're enjoying this content, please consider subscribing, as we'd love to have you join our journeys going forward. Another creature we've mentioned before is the Megalania, but it certainly deserves to be on this list. Megalania is an enormous reptile resembling an 8-meter or 26-foot monitor lizard at its biggest, living in the Pleistocene era in prehistoric Australia. As an ancestor of modern-day Komodo dragons, which have venomous glands feeding into their saliva, it is very likely that Megalania also had this venomous trait. If this was the case, it would possibly be the largest venomous animal to have ever existed. These glands would have spiked its saliva with a hemotoxin, preventing the blood of a victim from clotting once bitten, causing catastrophic bleeding, an immense drop in blood pressure, systemic shock, and ultimately death. But this would have taken time. And while all of the panic and pain and bleeding occurred, the Megalania would be stalking you, slowly tracking the trail of blood until you were too weak to run anymore. Then, with its large mouth and crushing bite, it would tear flesh from your body with savage headshakes. What's worse is there are tales of a 7-meter lizard from Australian Aboriginal mythology feasting on entire tribes, which could have come from encounters with a Megalania, meaning that it ate people too. Our final guest certainly didn't eat humans, but it may have also had venom like the Megalania. In the ancient seas of the Paleozoic era, Usarkana, a massive species of sea scorpion, was the apex predator of its time. When we say massive, this sea scorpion was about 1 meter long. Not huge compared to some of the other guests we've mentioned, but huge for a scorpion, that's for sure. And to base its morphology off of modern scorpions, Usarkana had relatively small pincers. This leaves only one obvious organ for defense: the tail. Unlike other similar species, this sea scorpion didn't have a flat paddle-like tail for swimming. It had a long spike on the end for attack and defense. While we cannot confirm whether this animal had venom or not, modern scorpions with small pincers tend to have powerful venom, as this is what is used most commonly. Following this same mode of thought, this would mean the Usarkana had a feeding style as brutal as modern-day scorpions, only on a much larger scale. It would strike its prey with the venomous tip of tail, causing paralysis or death shortly after. Then, with its spiked mouth, it would bite into the flesh and inject a digestive enzyme to dissolve the soft tissue. Once a nice mushy consistency, it would slurp up the liquid body parts as a nutrient-rich smoothie. Not only would you have been stabbed by a large venomous spike, but you were now being slowly dissolved and slowly slurped up by a huge sea scorpion. No thanks. Comment down below which animal you think was the most gruesome and any suggestions for our next video. As always, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. See you next time.